There are phrases which describe life that we are all very familiar with. Life is described as a series of ups and downs, highs and lows, peaks and valleys. It has been said that life is something that happens after you have made your plans. My favorite one is, life is like learning to play the violin in public. There's another description of life, that life is a series of stops and starts. No idea, no dream, no scheme, no plan, no anything like that ever moves in a steadily upward direction without interruption, pause, and stops. No relationship ever moves in an upward direction without hesitation, starts and stops. No career ever does that. No matter what we're involved with, what our interest, what our issue, what our plan, what our dream, whatever it is, there are going to be starts and stops. And the tragedy is that there are more stops than there are starts. In the ideal world, for every stop, there is a matching start. But things happen in between times. We get discouraged. We get disillusioned. We feel rejection and don't want to face the pain anymore. We say it's too much effort. And so we never, ever start again. We never realize our potential. We never realize the experiences that are there for us when we make that other new start. A number of years ago, a young woman came to see me about trouble she was having in her romance. She described the young man that she had met as the most ideal person she had ever come across, the person that she had prayed about. She felt that God had led those two people together. And she said, finally, I met my soulmate. But she said, now we're having troubles. We can't understand what's going on. And she said, I believe that God put us together. And if God put us together, why are we having so much trouble? And this is the way we often feel about God. As long as God is in it, there are no problems. There are no stops and starts. What I said to the young woman was this, something like this. I believe that God did put you together. And what God is saying to you is, I did you a favor. I used the movements of the Spirit to see that you met each other and fell in love. And now you've got to work out the details yourself. And this is so often what God expects us to do. Our focus today is on stops and starts, with the title being, It's Never Too Late. Let me say that again. It is never too late to start again. As I said a moment ago, in the ideal world, there is a start for every stop. And the tragedy is that we give up too soon. There may be a few people here today who remember in the late 1960s or early 1970s, on occasion, there was a man sitting in the center aisle about half the way back, always dressed in a white suit. Be it spring, summer, fall, or winter, he was wearing a white suit. He had a funny little mustache. His name was Colonel Sanders. And some of you may think that the funny little face on the Kentucky Fried Chicken boxes and advertisements is a caricature. It's not a caricature. It was a real person, Colonel Sanders. He was a character, yes. But if I have the story correct, it went something like this. He owned for many years a restaurant by the side of the road near his home in Kentucky. And then he retired. When he was 65 years old, he got his first Social Security check. And something about that check bothered him. He didn't want to sit in his rocking chair on the front porch of his house in Kentucky watching the girl go by for the rest of his life. So he got busy. And after the age of 65, created this enormous business, which is worldwide, called Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's never too late. Never to begin again. And more of you will remember a man who died 10 years ago at the age of 95. His name was Homer Surbeck. He was an elder in the church, in fact, secretary of the board, and sat over here to my right year after year after year. Homer Surbeck was an attorney that sat on top of a very prestigious and powerful Wall Street law firm. He was known as a lawyer with impeccable honesty. Homer Surbeck was a straight arrow. Many interesting things about that man. Most fascinating about him was that he was a confirmed bachelor. Nobody ever saw him look at a woman, say anything about a pretty lady. He seemed to be blinded to all of that. Confirmed bachelor. Some of his friends would say, well, Homer lived too many years with his elderly mother and took care of her and was never interested in another woman. Then, on his 74th birthday, Homer Surbeck got married. Dr. Peel did the wedding in his country home in Pauling, New York. When I talked to Dr. Peel about the wedding a couple of days after, I said, how did it go? He said it was a very simple and sweet ceremony with Homer and Margaret. And then I said, how did you celebrate? He said, after the ceremony, Homer said, I've got to take a nap. When he was 93, he told me, he said, Arthur, I've had a great life, very successful career. I've been honored and there have been many accolades about me. However, the happiest years of my life have been the last years of my life with Margaret. It is never too late to start again. Ladies and gentlemen, still there is hope for you. Don't give up. Let me take you to the book of Genesis, the first book in the Bible, to the 17th chapter. God is in conversation with Abraham, and they're talking about commitment and covenant. And then God says to Abraham, Abraham, you're 100 years old. Your wife Sarah is 90 years old. I want to tell you something. You're going to conceive. Sarah is going to have a baby. Well, Abraham thought this was nonsense. How ridiculous, how funny, how far out could God be? And he was so incredulous that he started to laugh. And as the scripture said, he laughed himself, falling down on his face with laughter. Couldn't be so crazy. What about Sarah? 18th chapter talks about Sarah. What was she doing? She was eavesdropping outside the tent. When she heard that news that she, a 90-year-old woman, would have a baby by a 100-year-old man, she too laughed. But what was going on here? What was going on and what still goes on is God knows us better than we know ourselves. God knows the possibilities that live in us. He knows the potential. God knows the things that we are supposed to be about. And God never gives up on any one of us. It's never too late. It's never too late. It's never too late to start again. A couple of perspectives on never too late to start again. The first thing is knowing that God knows you well and knowing that God believes in you more than you believe in yourself. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on any project. Never give up on any dream. Never give up on anything that you're supposed to be doing that you know it's important for you to do. Don't give up on yourself. To make things more difficult, it's often the case where the people around us give up on us. They don't support us. When I was much younger, I was a very, very wise man. I could see into the future. I could tell when something in somebody's life wasn't going to work. And time again, I was wrong. And so I don't say that anymore. And if somebody me, I will say something like, well, it's unlikely, but you never know. But you really do never know. We are so hard on one another. We are so sure in our judgments of people, but we don't know what God knows. We don't know what's inside. We don't know about that motivation one day that will come where the person will start again. Let me take you to one of the classic stories of the New Testament. In Jerusalem in Jesus' day was a huge pool called the Pool of Bethesda. And that pool had very special meaning to a lot of people. From time to time, the waters in that pool would stir up. They would be troubled. And it was believed at the time that an angel would be in that water, would be the one that stirred the water. And that, therefore, the water had special healing powers, and the first person in the pool would be healed of whatever disease or infirmity they had. And so people swarmed around that pool. One day, a very young man went to the pool. We don't know his name. We don't know the nature of his illness, but he had an infirmity. And he was dead set on getting into the pool one day first so that he could go on with the rest of his life and have a good life. But when he got there, he found that the competition for getting into that pool first was fierce. It was combative. It was difficult. Not only were some people very aggressive and very assertive on their own, but they would organize teams of people with their families and others to help them when the waters were stirred to be the first one. And after a while, this young man who didn't have the support systems and didn't have the speed got discouraged and got disillusioned, very unhappy. He didn't leave the pool area, but he retreated to the back and just stayed there for year after year after year. In his disillusionment, he also became embittered and began to blame people for his troubles. I can't get well, I can't get into the pool because people are selfish, they're not going to help me, they're not interested, they care only for themselves, and he went on and on. I had a sense of this man the other day when I was in a hospital here in New York City, one of the lower floors, waiting for the elevator to come down. And one after another elevator was jammed with people, and so finally when one of the elevators stopped, there was a woman in front of me. I said, we can get on this elevator. I know how to get on a subway. And the people wouldn't let us on. So we backed away, and this woman began to complain, what a terrible place this is. Everybody here is mean. Everybody is selfish. I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to preach her a sermon, but the only thing I said, I'm sorry you feel so badly about this place. Anyway, so this man was relegated to the back. Everybody had given up on him. He had given up on himself. And one day Jesus was wandering near the pool, always looking for a challenge. And certainly he had heard of this man, and so he went and he found him, engaged him in conversation. And he said to the man, young man, would you like to be healed? He must have laughed like Abraham laughed, incredulous. What do you mean? I've been here for 38 years. What do you mean I want to be healed? Of course I want to be healed. I've been here for all these years, and nobody would help me. Jesus stared him down. Sir, he said, would you like to be healed? And the man said, yes, I would like to be healed. And Jesus said with a commanding voice, but very gentle, stand up, take up your mat, and walk. And the man went rejoicing to tell everybody what this man had done for him. Stand up, take up your mat, and walk. And Jesus said, your faith has made you well. But the real dynamic here is God gives power to the faint. Those who wait on the Lord, those who trust God shall renew their strength, as Isaiah said. They shall mount up with wings as the eagle. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. We never know what God wants to do with us. We stay faithful to God, and God will empower us to to be able to stand up, take up our mat, and walk. You know, so often when we have these stop signs in our lives, stop sign is a necessary thing. It saves us from trouble. And so if you're going through something now where you come to a stop, maybe it's a gift from God. What do you do with a stop sign? You stop. You look to the right, you look to the left, you look ahead, you look behind you. And then you proceed when you know that it is safe. And you go ahead. Too many times we see stop signs as dead-end signs. Dead-end street, when they're not really dead-end streets. Never too late. Never too late to start again. And one other thought. And this comes from a wonderful man who died just a couple of years ago, Arthur Gordon. Arthur Gordon, as you may know, for many years was the editor of Guidepost magazine, and he was Dr. Peel's biographer, and a great writer in his own right. He tells a story about the time when he was a middle-aged man, and he was invited to a seaside cottage one winter day by some young friends in their 20s. When he got there, he found out he was not the only guest, but there was another man, an elderly retired college professor. So they had their lunch, and they were ready to go out for a walk on the beach, which was the plan of the day, when the wind blew and the sleet started to beat across the window panes of that cottage. And the young woman who was the hostess said, "I'm not going out on this stuff. I'm just going to stay home by the fire." And her husband said, "I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to turn this TV set on and sit by the fire and enjoy the afternoon." But the retired professor stood up and he said, "No, I'm going to go out and collect driftwood. I've been looking forward to this walk on the beach so I could get driftwood for my own fireplace." And Arthur Gordon found himself caught in between two forces. One, the force of the young people, one, the force of the older man. So Arthur decided, I'm going to go with the professor. Put on his coat and went outside. The professor went to his car, opened the trunk, and got an axe. Arthur said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm going to chop firewood, driftwood. I'm going to get it." So they went in the sleet and in the wind, and they picked up driftwood. The old man used the axe. And then the old man something like this to Arthur Gordon, which intrigued him and never left his mind, never left his thinking. He said, "I never want to be guilty of the art of non-living." And Arthur pondered on the art of non-living, which is the tragedy of so many lives. We let life go by. We practice the art of non-living when we don't engage, when we don't get involved, when we don't take on the challenge. And so the lesson, the second part of this sermon, is don't get caught up in the art of non-living. When you come to a stop sign, look around, ahead of you, behind you, on each side, and then start again. Whatever your situation is, whatever is going on, God has not given up on you. God gives power to the faint, and God will empower you to do what you need to do. Remember this. Remember Colonel Sanders. Remember Homer Serbeck. Remember Abraham and Isaac. Remember the college professor that was retired. It never is too late to start again. Bless you.